When someone clicks on a YouTube video,
I want to watch this Jose video, Professor, in air quotes, Jiang's bizarre education. To be fair, I don't like the start of it because he says professor in air quotes. That's a real professor. Professor Jiang is a real professor.
an expectation that comes with it. Maybe someone is expecting a music video or a cute clip of a cat. But if there's a guy standing in front of a blackboard with the title of a lecture underneath it, you're expecting something educational. All you really have to go on is the aesthetic of an educator, but it primes you to think you're about to learn something. In 1973, the Journal of Medical Education published a paper titled The Dr. Fox Lecture, A Paradigm of Educational Seduction by Naftalin, Ware, and Donnelly. It details a study where an actor was hired to play a fictional professor named Dr. Fox.
We go in one door, we go all the way around, we come out the same way. I think the word was communication. We ourselves do not listen.
The actor was trained to give a completely vacuous lecture that had all the aesthetic hallmarks of a real lecture, dressing the part, being given phony credentials, and using rhetoric that had the appearance of academic rigor with none of the actual content. Audiences were captivated by the actor not because he had anything of value to say, but because of the educationally themed aesthetic he used to present it. The title of Dr. Fox's lecture was Mathematical Game Theory as Applied to Physician Education. And in 2026, we have a new fake professor lecturing his audience using game theory. Jiang Chuqin, or Professor Jiang, as he is often called and refers to himself, is not an actual professor, but—
No! Nonsense! How dare you, Jose? No way, Jose! Not my Professor Jiang!
a high school teacher at Moonshot Academy in Beijing. A few years back, he began uploading his lectures to YouTube under the channel title Predictive History. Recently, his channel began to take off after some of his claims went viral, and his lectures are now getting hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of views. The 3 predictions he made in 2024 that put him on the map were that Donald Trump would win the 2024 election, President Trump would then invade Iran, and that the US would lose that war.
What's up with the Jose Mike situation? Why does it sound like it's coming from somewhere deep? I'm starting to think China kicked him out because he's a crank. No, they didn't. The professor has just been elevated to the dean of the Moonshine Academy. Professor Jiang is exactly the type of guy that Uncle Jank would defend, by the way, I think. I could totally see Uncle Shaky Gurga defending Professor Jiang, being like, he's a prominent fixture. He's a pillar in the pro-Palestinian movement.
The fact that Jiang is not a real professor gets overstated a bit, because YouTube is not a space where people typically check things like credentials or even sources. What matters is that Jiang—
Your sarcasm is confusing me. How do you actually feel about this guy? One of the most important thinkers of the 21st century. Dude is a crackpot conspiracy theorist, but his fourth dimensional minded thinking
has the aesthetic of a professor and is committed to the performance of teaching, creating the impression that his YouTube videos are educational. I'd like to take a closer look to what that education actually entails. How to predict geopolitical events is not a likely course for high school students, and that probably isn't the name of the class Jiang actually teaches. According to his profile on the Moonshot Academy website, he teaches Western philosophy.
But he only has a BA in English Lit. What does this have to do with Western philosophy? What does what he's talking about have to do with Western philosophy? I guess he's like, Western philosophy is all about being a Frankist, cannibalistic pedophile overlords, and America going to war with Iran, and then simultaneously losing said war, causing Pax Islamica and Pax Judaica to take root.
A year-long survey course that introduces students to the major ideas and books of Western civilization. On YouTube, these are broken up into several different sets of videos, including game theory, secret history, and great books. The predictions that made Jiang famous, Trump's win, the war with Iran, and its failure, are emblematic of his work. Taken in small bite-sized shareable bits, it's somewhat compelling. But when you take a closer look, things start to fall apart very quickly. For instance, looking at his prediction that Trump would win also includes a prediction about his running mate.
It's very likely that Trump will become president of the United States again in November, and he will pick Nikki Haley as his VP.
To be fair to Jiang, he does mention J.D. Vance in the video where he first makes this prediction, but only at the very end does he briefly consider him a possibility. But what makes the Haley prediction especially bad is that almost a week prior to Jiang posting this video titled Why Trump Will Win and pick Nikki Haley as VP, Trump posted this on Truth Social. Nikki Haley is not under consideration for the VP slot, but I wish her well, DJT. His prediction about the war in Iran was similarly filled with things that didn't happen, such as the US being part of an international coalition.
And Trump.
Dude, I love his predictions, dude. It's awesome. I do wonder like what it is about Professor Jiang that is catnip for so many people. Cause like no one is supposed to be 100%, right? No one makes 100% predictions. I certainly have made some very wrong predictions, right? And I'm pretty open about it. Is it the whiteboard? Is it the accent? Like I think there's something to it where there's this holistic picture that is unbelievably compelling. Maybe it's the way he says, okay, after every statement. Like, I think there's maybe like an Orientalist approach here where they see like an Asian wise man, wise beyond his years with a whiteboard. And that's the reason why people are just like, oh, this guy has like deep insight. When in fact, a lot of the stuff he says is really funny because it reminds me of like just unks in that side of the world. Not just like Asian unks, but like Arab unks do this too. Of course, it doesn't hit the same because Americans and Westerners don't usually perceive like Arabs to be wise beyond their years. You know what I mean? That's why I think the Orientalism works in his favor in this circumstance. But like he is literally like a Arab taxi driver. Like in the shit that he says. Like some of it is very compelling, some of it is absolutely truthful, very good, comprehensive analysis, and then the rest of it is just hokum. Where you're like, how did you arrive at this? Like, this is an insane thing. How can you believe both of these things at the same time?
Goes on TV. He announces Operation Iranian Freedom, a full-scale U.S. invasion of Iran, along with Israel, Saudi Arabia as its main partners, but the United Kingdom, UK will be involved, Australia will be involved, UAE will be involved, Poland will be involved.
What? The United States only had Israel as an ally when this war began. The failure of the US's invasion of Iran seems likely at the moment, but I suspect it won't go down the way Jiang predicts it will.
A massive invasion force is sent to Iran in the south. 100,000 US troops land. Maybe 200,000 Saudi Arabia troops land, okay? You think they're soldiers, but they're not. What they really are...
200,000 Saudi Arabian troops? Did he just say 200,000 Saudi Arabian troops? How big is the Saudi military? The total number of the Saudi military troops with active personnel strength, right? So this means like not just people that are going to be holding the guns, like total is 247,000 to 282,000. This means support positions. This means janitors. Saudi Arabia does not have 200,000 troops. Oh, he said 20,000?
Hostage troops land, okay? U.S. troops land. Maybe 200,000 Saudi Arabia troops land, okay?
Okay, he didn't say 20,000. No, he did not say. He said 200,000. Why? Why are people saying no? He said 20,000. What the is going on? Are you guys with me? Am I being gaslit by Professor Jiang fans, or am I being gaslit by people who are LARPing as Professor Jiang fans for fun? It's not that big of a deal. How much of a difference can 1-0 make? First of all, Saudi Arabia is not sending any troops to Iran anyway. But if he's out here saying Saudi Arabia is going to bring 200,000 troops, that is a fundamental lack of knowledge about what the Saudi military capabilities truly are. So that's why it's like it's an insane thing. It's like saying America is going to deploy 3 million troops to Iran to invade Iran.
You think they're soldiers, but they're not. What they really are, hostages. You have too many people in the country, so you can't get them out of the country, but you don't have enough people to actually launch a strike against Tehran. You can't resupply them. And they've been encircled by Iranian forces.
This is all in the future, though, so perhaps they will send 100,000 troops in through Iraq, only to see them stranded and become hostages. I'm a bit skeptical of that one, though. This is a pattern that holds pretty regularly when watching Jiang's commentary. Predictions and sometimes conclusions can sound sensible or compelling when you look at them from a distance without much detail or specificity. But when you get a closer look at how he...
Are you saying we should include support positions in troop estimates? No, when someone says they're bringing 200,000 troops, they're talking about a ground invasion. And the ground invasion does not factor in the entirety. Like, the generals are not counted in the ground invasion. The janitorial staff is not counted. Saudi Arabia's total troop number, like the total estimated strength with its entire personnel, is not just armed combatants. Here, I'll give you an example of the United States of America, okay? The United States of America has a massive military, right? What is it? What's the number now? United States total military. Yeah. The U.S. approximately has 2.81 million total personnel worldwide. Okay. 1.3 million is active duty troops and over 700,000 National Guard reserves. But the problem here is not all of those people, like a big chunk of that, a percentage of that is always going to be support staff. They're not going to be holding a weapon and shooting a weapon. Like when you look at the total number of service members in the United States military, that total number is not the amount of people. I'm a numbers guy. We can grok it. I'm a numbers guy. And what a lot of people don't understand, I was in the military. And at first I thought everybody in the military is shooting with a gun. And I grokked it. I said, let's grok it. The U.S. combat support staff, the tooth-to-tail ratio generally includes 3 to 10 personnel for every one frontline warfighter, providing crucial logistics, medical intelligence, and maintenance services with ratios increasing in complex modern operations. Thank you. You don't just grok it, dipshit. You ChatGPT it too. I grokked it. I ChatGPT it. It turns out a lot of those guys are not holding the guns. Do you see what I mean? So I highly doubt that Saudi Arabia even has 200,000 actual gun holders that they can deploy. And they certainly don't even want to do that anyway. That was never going to happen.
Reaches those conclusions or what those predictions more specifically contain, they don't hold much water. And they frequently reveal that Jiang is uninformed about the topics he's discussing. And there are also predictions that seem completely ridiculous, like this one.
If you know game theory, okay, and you understand the principles that we've learned today, then you're forced to conclude that in East Asia, North Korea has a better future than China.
To understand what drives someone to say that
What? Bro. Yo, this is my shit. He says such insane stuff, like when he said that the real global superpowers that are going to be popping off is Germany and Israel.
North Korea has a brighter future than China, we have to get into the nitty-gritty of how he constructs his predictions. One of the major keys to understanding Jiang's theories is that they are, above all else, narratives. Although he makes references to theoretical models and historical patterns, they always exist in the same structure of a narrative. Narratives exist to explain most of how we see the world, but Jiang uses concepts like game theory to give them all an academic vibe. For those unfamiliar with game theory, it is described
a mathematical theory about how decisions are made in situations where one person's decision affects another that is used in many fields such as economics, psychology, and biology.
How did he use game theory to game out that Jusha is the superior ideology as opposed to Maoism or socialism with Chinese characteristics? Because I really want to know how he gamed that shit out.
Jiang has a number of lectures supposedly covering game theory, though his use of game theory is a lot like the title of professor. It's one that serves to confer legitimacy to a narrative rather than actually educating people. Although I'm not an expert in game theory myself, his lectures don't really conform with the definition I just read or other examples I found while researching this video. According to Jiang, understanding what he calls game theory will make his students better people, help them understand the world, and provide the tools to make predictions. Jiang's use of game theory is used to describe a dynamic, the players involved, their motivators, and then their reactions, typically grounded in a concrete example. Or at least that would be the goal if his lectures were strictly about game theory. What often follows instead in his lecture is a series of assumptions that spiral out of control. In his first lecture on game theory, he provides the example of a dating game where 5 boys and 5 girls want.
Okay, I have to continue this video tomorrow because I have to go. We got Professor Jiang that I was watching yesterday and I had to stop. And we're going to get back into it now.
Involved, their motivators, and then their reactions, typically grounded in a concrete example. Or at least that would be the goal if his lectures were strictly about game theory. What often follows instead in his lecture is a series of assumptions that spiral out of control. In his first lecture on game theory, he provides the example of a dating game where 5 boys and 5 girls want to get married, and then he ranks their attractiveness based on 3 factors.
The first is genes, the second is wealth, and the third is status.
When he brings up factors that control the various elements of these games, they're always a bit suspect. He might describe one in detail, but then will offer a few quick sentences to describe the others and then moves on. It's also a little weird that he almost always has 3 things to list.
To win a fight, you have to have 3 things: focus, clarity, and resolve. And they are intelligence, spies basically, crime, and science. And these agents, of course, are called, there's 3 of them, okay? Well, there's actually a lot.
Another question I'm left with is how he quantifies any of these. In the dating game example in his first game theory lecture, how does one quantify genes?
Okay, so genes is very simple. It means that you're good looking, it means you're tall, it means you're healthy, you will live a long time, okay? Genes is pretty simple to understand.
Attractiveness varies across time and culture, and even within cultures, people can vary considerably in what they find attractive. This example only works if all the participants are in full agreement on what they find attractive, which is possible if you're only talking about 10 people. In the context of an abstract dating game in a high school classroom, it's not that big a deal that he leaves things simple. But this game starts to drift further from the initial premise. Here's a quick breakdown of how this game evolves.
All the girls want this one guy. Okay, and maybe number 4. They'll settle for number 4. But 3, 2, 1, they don't want. All the women in the world, many, not all, but many, just want to marry actors like Brad Pitt. And 3, 2, and 1, what do? Well, they watch Netflix, they watch porn, they play video games. They've given up on life, okay? They're like, we don't care.
Now I'm beginning to understand why he was so perfect and at home with Sneeko and all these other like right-wing weirdos. I mean, I already had that assumption because of the whole, it's the Pax Judaica and all this other shit that he was like, all these conspiracy theories like the Illuminati that he believed. Now I'm beginning to recognize that there was more to his commentary.
All these people incels, right? This entire competition is between...
Did I just tune into your goat doing hoe math? Yes, which of course is something that I also have to reluctantly believe now, because that's my Professor Jiang.
5 and 4 for all the women in the world. And this is, again, suicidal. This will lead to the death of humanity.
That section was not over the course of an hour-long lecture. All of that happened within the same 5 minutes.
Dude, this is really funny to think that he's like teaching a bunch of Chinese high school students in Beijing this as a part of his Western philosophy course. Because remember, he got a degree in English, and now his job is to teach Chinese students Western philosophy. I don't know how the Chinese firewall did not capture this man. Dugan is about to drop hoflation truk on Putin. Yeah, he had a conversation on, I cannot believe I'm about to say the sequence of words that I'm about to say. This man, Professor Jiang, had a conversation on Sneeko's broadcast on Kick with Dugan. That's a real thing that happened, which is part of the reason why Vladimir Putin might have learned about homath by way of Professor Jiang to Dugan to the ears and mind of Vladipu.
We went from a cute little game about dating to a story about how, when a wider reality is mapped onto that game, we see that women are so obsessed with status that they are destroying civilization by wanting to date high-ranking men and are responsible for creating incels. What started as a basic game that might have been helpful for learning some abstract concepts has turned into a justification for Jiang's own assumptions about the way society is working. The purpose of this scenario was not to teach people about game theory, but rather to use what Jiang is calling game theory to explain why the world is the way it is. This becomes more obvious as he then moves away from the small example to this larger discussion about these superstructures controlling society by changing the games we play, and that this will help us determine the life cycle of a civilization, particularly how they decline. And here's how he describes how that happens.
The moment you give women choice, they choose to improve their lives by marrying someone better.
Oh, God, I love this shit so much, dude. Yeah. Yeah, as opposed to men. When you give men choice, they don't choose to improve their lives. Incredible. Incredible take, sir. Thank you. This is one of my favorite, like, incel commentary moments always is like, women want to fuck the sexiest guys they possibly can. It's like, bitch, so do you. Like, what do you mean? Everyone does. Like, sometimes these people will take on, like, super basic things, right? Sometimes they'll take on, like, unbelievably basic concepts and be like, yeah, if you're attractive, then people will give things to you. And everyone's like, wow, what? What are you saying? I've never thought about that. I've literally never thought about that before. You mean to tell me that attractive people like traditionally attractive people sometimes get a upper hand in life. That's wow. What a great statement for Mother's Day, sir. I mean, it's the same shit. It's like, oh yeah, women want to have sex with men they find attractive. And so do men. Men want to have sex with women that they find attractive. Like, this is no way to live your life. This is not like rules that you can live your life by. This is just like basic shit.
Okay? Not all, but most. And so over time, what happens is your society collapses.
Yeah, this is insane. Yeah, over time, society collapses. If we let women have basic choice in their dating partners, society will collapse. Oh, wow. What an incredible take, sir. That is amazing. That's true. Well, what's the solution? Making sure that we take away women's choice, because otherwise the society is going to collapse. Why? Well, it'll collapse because they won't fuck me. And okay, they won't fuck me. Nobody wants to fuck me. If women have the choice to fuck whoever they want to fuck, that means they won't fuck me. Okay, which is why society is collapsing. It's pretty simple.
If you look at history, the best indicator that a society is about to collapse is if the women who are wealthy and well educated, if they refuse to have children. This is what happened to the Romans.
Rome did not collapse because of women. Historians have argued a number of factors that led to the fall of Rome, and Jiang's reading of history is a reductive one that only serves to feed his pet theory that giving women freedom is a signal that civilization is beginning its decline. This theory is, of course, not unique to Jiang, as it's often echoed in online communities that have a lot of hostility towards women. We're starting to get a small hint of what Jiang's media diet is and how it's affecting the way he sees the world. But wasn't this lecture supposed to be about learning game theory? Why are we getting history lessons about Rome? This is just a product of what his lectures are like, spiraling out of control and diving headfirst into his own pet theories about how the world works. But believe it or not, this first video is probably the one that comes the closest to being a lecture about game theory. But instead of learning anything about game theory, what we're learning is that Jiang has a very troubling reading of history and current events. Out of interest, I looked up a few lectures on game theory from other sources on YouTube, such as a series of lectures from Yale professor Ben Pollock. His lectures are dramatically different from Jiang's, using abstract examples that highlight the different types of games being played. They are a lot more informative and, dare I say, genuinely educational.
Rational choices can lead to bad outcomes. We put it more graphically before, but that's fine.
He also engages his students, encouraging them to play along with the game examples and having them discuss their ideas in class.
Okay, Professor Jiang does that too when he talks about game theory in home math. He's encouraging his incel followers to also do home math.
In general, it seems like a much better environment for learning than Jiang's classroom. Jiang's lectures often seem more about advancing his bizarre theories of the world than actually teaching.
Stop defending that fraud. Oh, you mean the Yale professor? I know, he is a fraud. Of course you didn't mean Professor Jiang. Not my Professor Jiang.
Students anything. To make these theories work, Jiang constructs elaborate models containing a sweeping story of different political, historical, and psychological forces that shape the world as we see it. All of it is reduced to a few simple factors that will be given extraordinary explanatory power. A great example of that is in one of his next game theory videos titled The World Game, where he identifies the factors that determine how likely a society is to triumph long term, and you better believe there are 3 of them.
Energy, openness, and cohesion.
While he'll define what each of these terms means, he doesn't explain how he can assess cultures on whether they have these factors or how much of these factors exist. How do you measure whether or not a country has energy or how much of that energy they have? He never really explains it. He just asserts that this country has it and this one doesn't. To describe Jiang's larger argument, he believes that powerful nations become lazy and complacent, allowing the smaller ones, which
This is his best work. You're just a hater.
have more energy,
Israel will rise up, okay?
openness, and cohesion to eventually rise up and topple them. Which brings us back to his ridiculous example of North Korea.
Poverty leads to creativity. Another saying this is that if I were to surmise the future, I would say right now in East Asia, I would think that North Korea has a better future than China.
But North Korea
Oh, come on! This is the guy. That's the GOAT, dude. That is the GOAT. Dude, what if he's right? Huh? Yeah. What if he's right? What if Jusha does prevail? What if socialism with Chinese characteristics is dookie And Marxist, Leninist, Jucheist principles thrive in the coming apocalypse.
Isn't the only example he gives. He mentions 3 other nations that are supposedly poised to become empires.
Germany. Why? Because he lost World War I and lost World War II. Japan. Because Japan lost World War II. And the last country, of course, is Israel.
What makes these predictions so incredibly silly is that they don't operate within a specific time frame. Japan and Germany have recovered well after World War II, though some of that was due to international support, but neither of them are poised to become an empire right now. The example of Israel is even more ridiculous, as Jiang mentions persecution going back thousands of years as a motivator. When will any of these countries rise up alongside North Korea?
Also, wouldn't that mean China, which has also withstood a century of humiliation, wouldn't that also mean that China is supposed to be a thriving empire? None of this makes sense. This don't make any dang sense.
He can't tell us, but since it's been almost a century for 2 of those 3 options, it seems there's no expiration date for these predictions. This makes these predictions unfalsifiable, which makes them effectively useless. It's like predicting that at some point aliens will visit the Earth. It could happen, sure, but if you're not going to say when, you can't be proven wrong because it hasn't happened yet, and possibly could at some point in the future. But whenever Jiang is faced with real criticism, he retreats to one of his more common defenses.
I'm just proposing to you a theory of how to understand the world, but what's actually going to happen, I can't actually tell you, right? But according to this theory, Germany and Japan and Israel will be the 3 great nations.
He says this a lot. To understand, he's presenting a model that has a set of predictions that may or may not come true. But if there's no way to reach the may not part, how can this model be tested? And if it can't be tested, it's not very useful. Jiang likes to use a lot of historical examples to support the models he constructs. From this lecture, he went all over the place. He was talking about the warring states of China in 250 BCE, Alexander the Great's Macedonia in 500 BCE, and the Spanish colonial project in Central America in the 16th century. All of this interwoven with assessments of the cultures involved and attitudes of their respective.
Wait, what? Chat, was Hasan being sarcastic in his Jiang reverence? Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. No, I'm being sincere. No! Bro, I can't do that. I'm realizing more and more that it's just no jokes, no jokes. Bro thought jokes would fly. I told you there are people unironically who think you believe this guy. Your brain is too small to comprehend Jiangian theory. True.
People. We can't really assess how he knows any of this when he says this culture is higher in energy or this one is higher in openness, because he doesn't really cite any sources or tell us how he's measuring any of this. But academic rigor is beside the point here. What's more effective than having any kind of academic standards is the impression that these rapid changes in topics creates. By flying through so many different times and places, it presents the portrait of someone very well read and educated, that Jiang is a polymath. That there can be a person so learned that they can synthesize knowledge across disciplines to create these rich theories of how the world works. And Jiang is presenting his game theory framework as something of that caliber. Not just skipping across different periods of history, but as we'll see later on, entirely different disciplines, including science and literature. As a self-contained theory, all of it actually holds together pretty well because there's a lot of internal consistency. He's clearly put some time into constructing all of this. But
that's
it's
what
very
a giant
easy
he
to create
is.
a model like
an
this.
Intellectual titan. An intellectual titan. That's my goat, dude. How dare you? I feel like this guy's just jealous. Jose? Yeah, it's not Professor Jose. Let me tell you, it's Professor Jiang. What kind of history have you predicted? Okay.
We're only looking at things in the vaguest of details. When that model eventually comes into contact with the real world, we can see just how shabby it is. For instance, when he takes that model and applies it to more recent history.
Don't worry about America, its technology. Don't worry about the economy. Don't worry about these things, okay? Just ask yourself one question. Is Iran transforming as a society? Are people becoming much more motivated?
In the previous lecture, the examples he presented all featured one supposedly weaker side conquering land from a stronger side, but I highly doubt Iran is going to be conquering any part of the United States. That said, we can see how Jiang tries to map his ideas on the current conflict, and it gets pretty silly.
The Shia are not afraid to die.
Go! Come on, man! Come on, brother. The Shia are not afraid to die. That's what it is. They lock in.
And because their great religious leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, was assassinated by the Americans and Israelis, they are motivated to seek vengeance,
Bro, he's doing the meme. It's like, there's an ancient Persian culture in Iran. It's a Shia method where they get very frustrated and seek out revenge when their leadership is killed alongside hundreds of little girls in a totally unprompted first strike. Yeah, that's just universal, dog. What the are you saying? There is literally no country on the planet that's like, oh, you killed our leader and also a bunch of civilians in the process? That's crazy. Well, I guess GG's, you know, there's no country that has done that. Sunnis hate dying. Yeah. Unlike the Sunnis, the Shia, they don't mind dying at all. Sunnis hate it. They hate it famously. Very different cultures, very different concepts.
Part of themselves for the greater good to seek eternal paradise. Okay? Jihad.
This is how he talks about the people of Iran, completely ignoring how unpopular the religious leadership of Iran actually is, and all the oppression required to keep the population under control. While this doesn't mean the people of Iran want American bombs dropping on them, I also don't think they're about to start a jihad because their leader was killed. Here's another silly point he makes to show how the Iranian soldiers aren't afraid of death.
Yeah, it's like, it's weird because it literally is a very basic concept that I describe all the time. And sometimes I use my own personal experience and like what I've seen in Turkey take place in the coup that failed. But this is a consistently held principle in virtually every country that has been in the crosshairs of American imperialism or in the crosshairs of like any sort of American engagement, right? Intervention. People don't like it. Turns out people like autonomy. Even if they don't favor the administration and the leadership, the one thing that they even favor less than that is a foreign alien invading force coming to the country. This is not a Shia framework, okay? The Vietnamese were not Shia. You understand? The Taliban was not Shia. The Iraqi, well, there was some Shia there, but by and large, people weren't all Shia. This is normal. They were spiritually Shia. That's funny.
Soldiers are not afraid of death. And we're already seeing that where the Americans have already blown up and destroyed the Iranian Navy.
The details of the operation, what defensive options the Navy...
And no, they haven't. Oh my God. Oh my God. I realized that the more I hear from Professor Jiang, the more annoyed I get. I realized that like I can't even keep up the memes when I hear him go on a long tangent about anything, especially shit that I definitely know a lot more than he does on, okay?
Navy had and the motivations of everyone involved is never explored. It was just...
Stop laughing. This is why they will build statues of him in Iran and not you. I mean, that's fine. I haven't even gotten a Lego bit, dude. Ryan Grimm got one before me, which, I mean, that's my goat. He deserves it. But yeah, by the way, between me and Professor Jiang, we're both the same level of professor, which is to say neither of us have a PhD. Anyway.
Those darn Muslims on one of their jihads. If all of this sounds incredibly...
Someone send him a clip of New Yorkers talking shit about him quick. His mood is spiraling. Yeah, give me a hog real quick that wants to kill me. I need to watch a video from some Italian hog. That always puts me in the right mindset. It puts me in a good mood.
Simplistic and silly, it's because it is. And when looking at his models in a modern context, it also reveals that they don't quite have the predictive power that he claims they do. He's simplified the story of history and is trying to map it on
you guys
to a
want to see
version of the
something
present
crazy?
that he is also similarly simplified.
Hold on.
It may make for a nice, easy story that you can digest, but it doesn't actually constitute a real or deep knowledge of anything that's happening. There's an interesting turn in later lectures where he starts walking things back.
This is a class focused on intellectual speculation. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to make us more curious about the world. It's supposed to heighten our critical thinking skills.
And in a later lecture, he walks it back even further.
So I'm not an expert. I'm not even a professor. Yes, I understand. But what I do is I engage in speculation for fun, for entertainment, okay? So just see this as a fun class where we're going to explore some fun topics that have no scholarly basis, okay?
Imagine your teacher opening up your class saying, we're just going to have some fun speculating on some stuff with no scholarly basis. The timeline here is really important, as these lectures where he starts sounding more defensive began to happen after he started blowing up in March of 2026. I suspect he's doing this in response to the increased criticism he's been getting now that his profile has significantly risen.
A lot of people, right? A lot of people talked big shit and said, Professor Hasan, which is not my real name. My real name is Professor Jihad, or Dr. Jihad, rather. I'm not a professor, I'm a doctor. A lot of people said, Dr. Jihad, where's your PhD in racism? Where's your whiteboard, they said. Here it is. Okay? That's right. Do you understand now? This is how it works. This is how it works. Dr. Jihad. But his board looks cooler? Okay, well, we're working on it. What are you going to teach us? Today, we are going to learn about Kussy. Okay? We're going to learn about Kussy. What Kami says, thank you for the 30 gifted subs. Open Presents, thank you for the 25 gifted subs. Damn, I bring 1 bit back and hella people are in the chat lasering me with gifties. Yes, today we're going to learn about Kussy. This is an ambulance, okay? This is an ambulance. It's a type of a car, okay? It's a type of car. This is a police car. It's also another type of a car, okay? When one car falls in love with another car, they have a baby car, sometimes a bus, okay? Now, in the car cinematic universe, okay, on September 11, 2001, in the car cinematic universe, one of the planes hit the towers. Cars 9/11. Pay close attention, okay? This is what is known as game theory. Game theory. Let's get back to the Dr. Jiang lecture now.
The problem with this defense is that he frequently makes predictions and frames them as tests to his theory for validity. Some of these predictions aren't falsifiable, which he never says, but some of them absolutely are, and he sees the results of those predictions as a means of adjusting the theoretical framework. This isn't just entertainment. He's trying to present a working model of the world to his students that supposedly responds to new information. And as we'll see later in this video, Jiang is perfectly happy to share his ideas outside of the classroom as serious geopolitical analysis. If he thinks this is all entertainment, he shouldn't be presenting his understanding of the world as something to be taken seriously. In a later lecture, when Jiang is talking about the factors that help him form his lecture, there are of course 3 of them, he lists them out, and debate and doubt—
I was still copying it? Okay, well, you should have taken notes faster, and next time, you should remember that.
—are fine, but the 3rd one he mentions is troubling.
I will say things that are imaginative, that are speculative, but which is not backed up by any evidence. Don't be afraid to do that, okay? If you want to seek the truth, you have to make some imaginative leaps.
Speculating without evidence sounds like a terrible piece of advice, especially coming from a teacher. While a healthy imagination can be fun, it's particularly unhelpful when speaking on subjects that someone doesn't have a deep knowledge of. Jiang would be perfectly within his right to be making these imaginative leaps if we could trust him to have a good grasp on the subjects he's discussing. That is, if he was making educated guesses. But as we'll see in the next section, his confidence hides a lot of ignorance. It's tough to catalog all the things Jiang gets wrong, in part because he speaks on so many different things and often explains them with vague terms. There are statements he makes that can very much be fact-checked, and when you do, you start to find mistakes that reveal how little he really knows about the subjects he discusses. A great example of just how badly he gets things wrong can be found in one of his earlier lectures in the Secret History series. For some context, he's trying to explain the limitations of science, and he hones in on specific concepts. Of course, he's got 3 of them: Bang, evolution, and how memories are formed.
This is all that science knows. I mean, this is pretty simple, but this is what science tells us about where we came from, who we are, where we're going.
He then tries to point out problems with all 3 of these ideas. He seems to think the concept of dark energy disproves the Big Bang theory.
It's cheating, okay? So let me give you an example. Let's just say you take a math test, and the teacher asks you 1987 plus 25. And your answer is 20. Okay? That's obviously wrong, right? So your teacher says, this is wrong. And then you say, oh, I know how to fix this. Plus dark energy. Problem solved.
To use his math example, if someone wrote 1987 plus 25 equals 20 plus dark energy, where dark energy is an unknown variable, x, that would still be mathematically correct, even if you got a bad mark on a test because your teacher doesn't like you giving such a cute answer. Jiang does absolutely no work to reckon with the evidence that supports the Big Bang Theory because that would require a little bit of effort to understand cause.
I'm a little confused. Like, is he just stupid? Like, what is that? Is that what it is? Like, he's just kind of like dumb but confident? Is that what we're watching right now?
Cosmology. Instead, he uses his own ignorance to frame the concept of dark energy as cheating that disproves the Big Bang Theory. His commentary on evolution is similarly uninformed. He believes it's true for other animals, but not for human beings.
What? Oh my God, he doesn't believe in the theory. Oh my God, he doesn't believe in evolution. Oh my God. Oh, that's my goat. Oh, he's so sick. He's so sick. I can't believe you all ever doubted him. China's going to kick this guy out. Yeah, it's really funny. Does he even do any videos on Chinese social media? Because I feel like if he did, they would probably do something about it.
Now, what scientists will tell you is, well, before there were different species, the Neanderthal, the Cro-Magnon, and then gradually Homo sapiens took them over. And you can believe that, but it's problematic because according to evolution, there should be many, many different types of humans, okay? Maybe some with 6 fingers, some with 3 eyes.
I don't know where this is coming from. How many other mammal species are walking around where each member has a different number of eyes? He also makes other small mistakes, like attributing the term survival of the fittest to Charles Darwin when it was actually coined by Herbert Spencer. But generally speaking, he doesn't seem to have a good grasp of evolution either. Later on, when he starts getting into the subject of psychology, he tries to explain how we contextualize our experiences within our minds. He uses the terms worldview and personality interchangeably, which is already problematic, but it gives him the opening to say he believes that without a worldview, our minds would not be able to handle all the sensory information around us.
If your brain were to absorb all the experiences, your brain will explode because there's too much information to process. Therefore, your worldview processes different experiences. It differentiates between experiences that are important and experiences that are not important. And experiences that are important, of course, goes into your long-term memory.
This isn't really true. Not having a worldview doesn't mean your mind is incapable of sifting through information it receives. It only means that you haven't developed more sophisticated understanding of the context you live in, which is what makes his next point especially ridiculous.
In theory, babies should not have a worldview. They should not have a personality. But if that's the case, then how do they process memories? How do they know what memories to store, what memories not to store? Where does the personality come from? And
elephants, famous animal with a tremendous worldview. That's what they always say about elephants. An animal with incredible memory, long-term memory capabilities. Clearly, it's because of their capabilities of having, like North Korea, elephants have a bright future.
Why is it embedded in us from the...
Do the Chinese parents that send their children to this school where he's giving these lectures, because there's students in front of him, do they have any idea what the this guy's talking about?
Very first day.
Are babies born with personalities? They appear remarkably close-lipped about it, so perhaps there's a dark secret they're hiding from us. Or perhaps, much like language, being able to sit up without falling over and how to feed themselves.
No, the room is not empty. No, he has students, bro. He's literally doing... This guy's the next Parenti.
Children gradually acquire the many things that make them who they are as they become older. There's actually a whole field that studies that called developmental psychology. When it comes to personality in infants, the closest measure we have is to look at their temperament, which is not the same as a worldview, by the way. Just a general way to describe the traits of some infants compared to others. Babies appear perfectly capable of perceiving the world without needing to contextualize everything through a worldview. So Jiang's objection, again, doesn't reflect the science he's trying to debunk. All of these misunderstandings reveal a startling lack of scientific knowledge for someone lecturing on the subject, particularly if the point he's trying to make is the limitations of these sciences. So it's not a surprise that he eventually ends up here.
If you look at every major scientific discovery, it all came to the person in a dream or when or it sort of popped into that person's head.
He applies this to himself and how he writes.
What am I going to do if I have no ideas? I can't write anymore. But what happens is the next day I get up and I have new ideas. And I write it back and I write it down again, okay? So it's not like I'm generating these ideas. It's more like I'm receiving these ideas.
And that's how he teaches too.
What? For context, he's teaching private high school students. This shit does not fly in Chinese public schools. I thought China cracked down on private schools. How did they let this one fly, dude? I don't understand it. China's doing reverse class warfare, where if your child is dumb enough to not be able to get to the best public school, he's stuck going to the best private school, and this is your teacher in the best private school. They're doing downward social mobility for the upper crust of Chinese society.
Accessing a higher force, and I'm receiving this information that I can then articulate to you in class.
Because he believes coming up with ideas is channeling the divine.
No scientist in the history of humanity has ever come up with a great idea using the scientific method. I guarantee you. They've all came up with a great idea through their imagination, through their intuition.
What? What the That's incredible. He guaranteed it. You can't deny it. He guaranteed it.
By channeling the divine.
What started off as a lecture about science and its limitations, all coming from someone who clearly doesn't understand the parts of science he's chosen to talk about, has devolved into a complete mess where he's claiming that great ideas and discoveries are channeling some kind of spiritual dimension, and that this spiritual dimension reflects an even bigger theory of how the world really works as secret societies manipulate events to press their own occult beliefs onto all of us.
The people in charge, the secret society.
I feel like his worldview is also all over the place. Like, there's no way that he believes all this, right? I can't comprehend a guy who has all of these complex thoughts in his mind at the same time.
Societies, they are interested. They must make hell into heaven and heaven into hell. They must invert the world in order to maintain their power. You don't know this, but all of science, it's not about discovering reality. It's about reinventing reality in a way that serves power. That's what science really is.
And how will this all end? Well, we can only hope that Elon Musk will save us.
So there are all these different fail-safe systems in here to make sure that hell can never triumph. And that's why Elon Musk wants us to go to Mars, okay? Even though God and Satan are just projections of our imagination, they do help us understand the world better.
So heaven and hell are metaphors and projections of our imagination, but somehow they help us understand the world better because of the existence of these secret societies who apparently believe all of this. You probably noticed I spent very little time trying to debunk these last few claims.
Yeah, because you can't, okay? I'm sorry, you're not Professor Jose, okay? And you know who you certainly aren't? Professor Jiang. Oh man, I'm having so much fun on this stupid ass day.
Because there's nothing of substance there. It's all an imaginary hypothetical asserted without any real evidence, all predicated on a man's inability to understand science. Jiang's constructed vision of reality has no basis in the one we seem to exist in. He did something similar in another secret history video where he speculated that ISIS was created by the United States using brainwashing interrogation methods.
Okay, he had, again, classic Professor Jiang had me in the first half, and then the second half is unbelievable. ISIS was created by the United States. Okay. With mind control laser beams? No. What the f are you saying?
That were identical to ones used by ancient Egyptian priests on their leaders in special ceremonies thousands of years ago. Here's how he tries to connect those two stories.
ISIS, Islamic State. ISIS is the name of what? The Egyptian goddess who saved Osiris, right? And who fathered Horus. Do you think it's a coincidence? Maybe not.
Yes, it's that the acronym of the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, ISIS, and the name of the Egyptian goddess, Isis, sound the same. That doesn't really make sense because ISIS, the terrorist group, don't use the English language.
Yeah.
They speak Arabic and call themselves a name I'm putting on screen because there's no way I can pronounce it. The acronym for their name in Arabic is Daesh, not ISIS. He also doesn't engage in any of the
What the f? Wait. He literally, the coincidence, maybe not? Oh my God, that's unbelievable. This guy's awesome. I'm convinced he's baiting leftists with these titles. He's a Mossad agent. I'm calling it, bro. This guy's awesome.
Hard work of linking specific torture victims of the US government.
I'm just thinking about Chinese students still in my mind. In my mind, I'm thinking about Chinese students listening to this guy to learn English, or I can't tell if he's an English teacher or if he's a teacher of Western philosophy, but he's not teaching either to these children, okay? These kids are going to this private school and coming out less knowledgeable than they went in. It's awesome.
To the creation of ISIS, something that would be doable since the names of these victims are documented. Also, the existence of torture is not the same as brainwashing. He would need to provide far more evidence than the presence of psychologists who were overseeing some of the torture. The other big problem is that story about the priests who were doing brainwashing back in Egypt. That one he made up.
5,000 years ago in Egypt, they were doing this. But again, because we are officially starting the Gay Talese journalism course. Traditionally, we've understood journalism and research as this method of just collecting information, organizing it, and then expressing it. But then along came a man named Gay Talese, and he transformed journalism. He transformed the way we understood research. Okay? So we created something called literary journalism, which is the idea that journalism can be by itself be literature. But the Gay Talese method is going to teach us how to be creative, how to be...
He has your handwriting? Chill. I'm one of his students. Guys, it's time to come clean. The reason why his handwriting and mine are so similar is because I'm actually one of Professor Jiang's students. That's why I was in China. Every moment that I wasn't live streaming in China, I was actually getting lectured directly by Professor Jiang. It's time to come clean. 11 years ago, China's super schools. Here's Professor Jiang.
By Asian countries. So right now, there's a lot of concern in Europe, and especially in America, because America didn't do very well on the PISA, that the future now belongs to China. It belongs especially to East Asia, because...
you don't search this video, the algorithm presents it to you. The Jiang dynasty conquered YouTube. Jiang has been cooking longer than we thought. Yo, it's my boy, Professor Jiang. Bro didn't age a day in like 11 years. Bro is stomping all over the YouTube algorithm. They must like him a lot. This man has taken over the YouTube algorithm. It's actually kind of wild how much Professor Jiang is promoted. Professor Jiang thinks Hamas is actually movement, the resistance, the Islamic. Yeah, it's true. That's what it's. Hamas in English is himtertiti. Himtertiti. Yeah. Or no, not himtertiti. Sorry. Movement, the resistance, the Islamic, which would be, I know. It's Harakat al-Mukawwama al-Islamiyya, right? Harakat al-Mukawwama al-Islamiyya, which is, the Islamic resistance movement, which is Hamas, which in English would be, I guess, the Islamic resistance movement. So it would be IRM.
Okay, what's really important is, this is all speculation. And it's really important for you to doubt and question me, because we don't actually know that this happened. All the records have been lost to us. And obviously, this will be the greatest state secret of Egypt. But from my perspective, it makes sense.
Who the hell cares if it makes sense to this guy? If he can't provide evidence of any of this having happened, how is that any better than pretending any other story someone else imagined is real? He similarly seems to have no clue what he's talking about on other subjects. Here's his description of how capitalists created communism to destroy socialism.
In many ways, communism is a creation of capitalism as a weapon to destroy capitalism's major enemies. Capitalists hate democracy. Why do they hate democracy?
Okay, true.
Because if you think about it, if people had power, the workers had power, they would all get together.
Base. He's cooking. Just wait, though. I'm sure he's going to flip it around.
And vote to redistribute wealth, right? To make the rich pay more taxes. We call this socialism.
After once again hedging that none of this may be true, he then spins this wild story of how Karl Marx was a tool of the English elites who want to pit the workers against the bourgeoisie through a messy propaganda campaign that also kicked off anti-Semitism. He then provides
Wait,
an
what?
example of what he calls evidence that communists were operating in a secret society, one that was intentionally made discoverable because they were a psyop that used anti-Semitism to vilify itself, because it was advancing the interests of capitalists.
What?
They admit we are a national conspiracy, we're a secret society. This is a secret document that we read amongst ourselves. But it's also possible for you to steal and show that, yes, there is this secret society, a national conspiracy of Jews who are trying to destroy the world.
If this sounds ridiculously convoluted, that's because it is. This secret document being shown is the Communist Manifesto, and Jiang is presenting the idea of international solidarity as some kind of poorly hidden conspiracy. Except this book was widely published and available to read all over the place. At no point was this a conspiracy. It wasn't poorly hidden, it just exists. The anti-Semitic conspiracy theories were put onto it because it turns out creating anti-Semitic conspiracy theories is a long-standing tradition in Europe going back centuries. A more modern example would be how political parties often vilify immigrants to disguise their own economic agenda that's more centered around providing tax cuts for the wealthy rather than providing services for people who actually need them.
Wait, he's saying the communists were the anti-Semitic ones? Wait, what? I'm so confused. Is he what? Or is he saying that like anti-Semites were anti-communist? He just said something so insane that it genuinely gave me a stroke, I think. It's whatever you wanted to be, my friend. Communists were secretly capitalists. It's the classic, what was it? The Rothschilds and British bankers funded the socialists, the communists then, but they were also doing it to do anti-Semitism. Someone said Karl Marx. Jiang was saying communists were being anti-Semites on purpose to discredit communism and socialists because communists were a psyop created by capitalists. Yeah, but he's Asian. I believe him on pause. But what I don't understand is the Cultural Revolution missed one.
Turns out we have a model of history that explains all of the events Jiang finds mysterious that work just fine without entertaining this secret society hypothesis that Jiang finds so compelling. The fact that history seems impossible to Jiang is hardly grounds for his speculation. But as you might be able to tell, we're starting to get into some dicey territory here. And it certainly isn't the only time we see troubling theories popping up from the ideas Jiang wants his audience to consider. Here's an example of him supposedly reading a map that measures academic performance.
Muslims don't do well on the PISA. And that's why there's great fear that Islamic countries will fall behind economically.
While he briefly mentions the predominantly Christian Central and South America, which are also in red, he only brings up religion when he's talking about Muslim-majority countries, and without any evidence, asserts that their religion explains their poor performance on this academic test. This is characteristic of how Jiang talks about Muslim people in general, such as when he hypothesized that Iranians were all ready to start fighting a jihad. According to what I've learned from his background, he spent a brief time teaching in Afghanistan, but somehow his understanding of Muslim people seems to be limited to stereotypes that sound like generic fear-mongering that followed September 11th. This video highlighting educational disparity.
Okay, this guy has to be an agent, right? Is this another one of those like insane moments where the CIA releases a psyop and it ends up harming Americans? It reminds me of how they did vaccine hesitancy campaigns in the Philippines, but I guess they never accounted for all the vaccine hesitancy that would take shape in the United States of America. They were like, hey, we sent him to Afghanistan. I mean, he's too young to have literally been one of those guys who was, teaching the Nebraska textbooks that had like bombs on them to the mujahideen in madrasas. But I don't think this man does anything with intention. I'm not even sure he has a worldview. He doesn't.
Is about immigration. And he spends some time talking about the discrimination immigrants face. To be more specific, though, he really only talks about the discrimination faced by East Asian men, like him. Of the two main types of discrimination he mentions, and I'm genuinely shocked he used 2 instead of 3, one of them is that there are a limited number of CEO positions available to East Asian men. The other form of discrimination is that East Asian men do poorly on dating apps. In this section, it's very strange how he fixates specifically on white women.
A white woman will be attracted to the average white guy, and she will only be interested in the highest earning Asian guys.
How he talks about women in general gives off some negative vibes.
It's easy for them to find someone of their status or below, but it's very hard for East Asian men to actually marry up and improve their status and social economic standing.
Jiang talks about women like they're symbols of status, which is a pretty bad way to approach dating, and I'd wager treating women like that is going to hurt your chances far more than being East Asian. By the way, I want to make it clear that it is true that East Asian men, women, and non-binary people do face discrimination. It's an unfortunate truth, and it should be called out. The problem here is that Jiang is doing a very poor job of making that case, and it seems more self-serving than trying to speak for any kind of community. And he eventually uses his own personal story to go to a much darker place, where he explains that East Asian men are suckers for playing the game. That is, to be an immigrant who integrates into their new culture, because it allows white men to marry their best women while other minorities cheat the system.
The most attractive of all Asian women will be married off to white guys, whereas East Asian guys will make their money and then stay at home and play video games all the time. Okay? The game is rigged.
Okay, he has a lot of passion when he's talking about this, unlike other subjects. I feel like this hits close to home for him somehow. I don't know why, but this is the most like angered I've heard him speak. He's doing r/AZN identity posting. I know. This is a high school teacher. Okay, he's got students in that room that are listening to him educate them on Western philosophy.
Only logical strategy, according to game theory, to this situation is to break the game, cheat, okay? And that's what the other minorities are doing.
This racist rant is supposed to be a lesson in game theory, by the way, which supposedly explains why these other minorities are grouping together and having lots of babies so they can take over. He eventually goes back to being bigoted towards Muslims specifically.
In Europe, they have a huge Muslim problem. These Muslims are less likely to integrate. They don't do very well in school, but they will claim welfare. They will have lots and lots of babies, which is a drain on the economy of these nations. So if trends continue, then it is most likely that Muslims will control Europe in 25 years' time.
Yes, it's true. He caught on, dude. This is literally okay. I'm beginning to realize something here. I have to be very serious for a moment. I genuinely think there's only one type of YouTube content that just goes viral all the time, and it's this. Because what he's talking about is literally like early Gamergate era. Since the invention of YouTube, the only people that have gotten the algorithmic boost, not to get all Professor Jiang with it, not to get all conspiratorial, has been guys that say this. It's never stopped being guys that say this. There are different variants. There are different generations of content creators that come and go, but there's only one absolute, and that is if you are saying exactly these words, women ain't shit, you know, they want to fuck all the hottest guys, they don't want to fuck you, and also Islam is going to overtake Europe in 25 years, that is algorithm catnip. For some weird reason, literally every single top content creator on YouTube has done this. Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, now Professor Jiang, Sargon of Akkad, like all of these people that have engaged in political commentary and achieved like maximum virality have done both of these things every single time. Andrew Tate, Tyler Oliveira, what the is going on? Why is that like the thing? I want to test it out. I want to do like a video talking about both of these things, you know?
Okay.
For Jiang, I'll do my own list of 3 here. Muslim people operating in unison, never adjusting to the culture in their new home, and wanting to take over is part of the anti-immigrant rhetoric that has been used against every immigrant group for decades. It's never been true, and I don't see what makes Muslim people uniquely threatening, especially since we're reducing people that can come from entirely different parts of the world down to their religion. I'd wager someone who immigrates from Indonesia probably has a very different experience than someone who is immigrating from Pakistan. This map he's so worried about doesn't just include newly arrived immigrants, it would include second, third, and later generations as well. People who were not only born in Europe, but have families that stretch back decades. Do they not get to be European? Or can they never be part of the only culture they and their family have ever known because of their religion. The reductive way of looking at the world Jiang frequently uses unsurprisingly leads to conclusions like these ones, where his own ignorance simplifies diverse populations into easily understood threats, in this case turning his classroom lecture into a rant about population replacement that wouldn't be out of place on an episode of Tucker Carlson, where Tucker Carlson frequently cries about white people being under attack. Unsurprisingly, Jiang's a big fan of his.
Well, thanks so much for inviting me, Tucker. I'm a huge fan. I've been admiring your work for a number of years now.
While Jiang predicates some of what he says about immigration on Europeans being racist, he makes this important point towards the end of the lecture.
Immigration is not natural. If you're born into a community, what is natural is for you to want to help this community grow and develop. You want to contribute to this community. What is not natural is for you to say, you know what, this community sucks, I'm gonna go find a new community.
Jiang is arguing that racism present in Europe is a response to something unnatural, all while Jiang does some racism of his own. It's a nasty bit of business where someone who was an immigrant himself seems to have learned the worst lessons of any discrimination he may have experienced. And there's another moment in one of his lectures that also requires some discussion, and that's where Jiang denied the Holocaust. This comment is brief, but can be seen in the video titled "The German Will to Power."
We don't actually have any concrete evidence for the Holocaust, okay? So one piece of evidence for the Holocaust is this speech by Hitler.
The context here is that he's examining an anti-Semitic screed from Hitler and trying to argue that the term Jewish is a metaphor.
It's the Jews who are a metaphor for a national elite group of individuals who are conspiring to undermine the vitality and the strength of the German nation.
Like everything he discusses in his lectures, he doesn't linger too long on this point.
Okay, on this segment, I will not be even jokingly defending Professor Jiang. It's not happening. That's insane.
And it's part of a much larger framework I mentioned earlier about how anti-Semitism was used to mask the real origins of communism, which was apparently the capitalists. I'm not sure if he means that Hitler saw through this ruse or if we should understand his words in that context rather than what they literally mean. But to even go down this road
saying there is no concrete evidence for the Holocaust is one of the most insane things that you can say. Again, by the way, feeding back to the theory that I presented previously, which is this is the only type of content that the YouTube algorithm promotes. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a grand conspiracy, not to get all Professor Jiang with it. I took the robe off at this point, so I'm no longer Dr. Jihad. But it is crazy that he hits all of the high notes, dude. This is straight up white boy catnip. You put information like this in whatever form it takes in front of young white boys, and they will literally give you the world. It's the same with Fresh and Fit, Andrew Tate, Professor Jiang, Sargon of Akkad, Richard Spencer, Nick Fuentes. I don't know what the fuck it is. You got to be an incel. You got to say Muslims are taking over Europe, and you got to deny the Holocaust, or at least like show a little bit of skepticism towards it. And straight up, YouTube will be like, oh my God, step right this way, sir. You are literally the GOAT. We will put you at the top of the leaderboard, at the top of the directory. Okay. Is Sargon even still going? No, I'm saying they come and go, but they have their moments, right? And there's different eras. There's always like a different era where there's a content creator where you're like, why the f is this guy famous? He's like absolute dumbass. And then you scratch the surface and you always find the same shit. You scratch the surface and you find the same exact policies, the same exact ideologies, the same exact principles. Unvarnished white supremacy, hatred of women, Nazism, different variants of like fascist behavior, fascist ideology. Tyler Hitler Vera is another example of this, and I don't understand it at all.
Put us in some alarming territory where these abstract...
Sam Harris hates women. Sorry, my best friend is a lib who is obsessed with Sam and I need ammo. Yeah, I mean, Sam Harris doesn't deny the Holocaust, and I don't think he hates women that much. I think he's just like basic level. It's not anything exceptional, but he is unbelievably racist. And for your liberal friend, I mean, your liberal friend might be a huge Islamophobe because that's like Sam Harris's number one thing. Maybe he just can't imagine the Nazis would do the Holocaust because it doesn't fit into game theory. Fuck.
abstract hypotheticals have Jiang engaging in some kind of denialism that divorces us from history as we understand it, and instead the fantasy world he's creating. This particular lecture isn't a part of his game theory series, but rather one titled Civilization, where he provides other absurd alternative readings of history, such as the Carthaginian Hannibal not actually existing.
Hannibal Barca did not exist as a person.
While incredibly silly, his commentary on Hitler and the Holocaust can't be so easily laughed at. And if he can upload new versions of lectures to fix audio issues, I think he can upload new versions of lectures that supposedly have him accidentally denying the Holocaust. At least according to his audience, that's the defense I saw most frequently. It seems like that would be a really good thing to fix. But as we step out of the classroom, maybe we'll get a little more information on what he thinks about this. A question that kept popping into my head while watching these lectures was, how is this a class? Although Jiang teaches a course called Western Philosophy, he only mentions philosophers in passing and instead subjects his students to long discussions about modern-day geopolitics and his bizarre theories on world history. Occasionally he'll try to connect Plato or Kant to his lecture, but it's hardly a suitable amount of material for a real lecture on those subjects. Jiang's teaching methods are unorthodox, but it seems to fit the vibe of the school he teaches at, Moonshot Academy. I can't speak to what the average high school is like in China, but this one seems unique, with a striking interior design and small class sizes of less than 10 students per teacher. I don't know what any of these other classes are like, but I hope these kids are getting a better education than what they're getting in Jiang's class. Jiang does talk about his previous experiences in education at other institutions. Notably, he spends one of his lectures complaining about how he was fired from his previous teaching job.
The word that everyone used to describe me was not reformer, not visionary, not idealist, not dreamer, but dictator. Okay? Or another word that they used that was more common was...
I think Hasan loves Professor Jiang so much because his stream is the only leftist stream where gaming is just a theory. No, I love Professor Jiang because he gets to teach you the real theory. All the Hammer and Sickle Twitter accounts are right, okay? I purposely am trying to defeat all the revolutionary spirit that people have by educating you on the Professor Jiangian style of theory. Does he even teach English? I don't know what he's teaching. I know that technically they're saying, people keep repeating, and the school is presenting him as a teacher of Western philosophy. And yet I have heard zero Western philosophy. This motherfucker has a Yale education, by the way, an English degree, but still, like, this is a Yale educated guy.
This guy's an asshole. Okay?
I guess technically Holocaust denial definitely does fit in Western philosophy. So he's just teaching, his entire thing is basically teaching his students that Western philosophy is insane. Okay? Just be an insane woman-hating, racist Holocaust denier, and you basically understand damn near entirety of Western philosophy.
This guy's a complete asshole.
I'm not sure talking about how you lost your last job is suitable for a lecture, but he eventually turns this personal anecdote into a story about how everyone involved with education is lazy and not operating out of a deep love of brightening young minds, like he is.
What? Yeah, after every lesson, he literally says, this is why you're not supposed to go to America, where I got a college degree in one of the best institutes of higher learning at Yale University. This is why you need to stay in China.
Listening to his lecture on that experience of getting fired, the big takeaway I got was that it sounded like his experimental curriculum design had very tough grading, which annoyed some people. His current class doesn't have grades, though. It doesn't have tests either. Students either pass or fail. How he assesses their learning is never made clear, since most of his classes are typically him lecturing with the odd question every now and again. Before the school's break for midterms, Jiang's class featured a midterm he designed, where he answered questions from the internet.
All right, so in this tweet, Mr. Bojack said that, listen.
He does eventually give his students the chance to ask questions, though they usually just create opportunities for him to further exposit his bizarre ideas. In this clip, he's responding to a question about his theory that Israel is going to let Tel Aviv get destroyed so the more secular Israelis will die, leaving the more religious ones in charge.
It's not that hard
to... What the fuck? Dude. Wait, Dude, this guy's out of his fucking mind. Dude, oh my God. I need to be in his class so bad. Next time I go to China, I am going to try to be in his class. I'm going to try to figure out a way where I can sit through one of his lessons. Oh my God.
Rebuild an economy and a city. It's not, okay? What is hard, though, is to develop the spiritual cohesion of a people, to make them believe in something so that they're willing to die for it, okay? That's what matters, all right? Destroying a city, you can rebuild in 5 years' time. It's not that hard. Just hire the Chinese to do it.
Bro, this guy's really stretching the boundaries of the firewall, okay? Like, how is the Chinese... Dude, the Chinese government, everyone talks about how the Chinese government is so repressive and so fucking... And there's truth to it, right? But goddamn, they're just letting this guy do whatever the fuck he wants. Clearly, they don't give a shit about a lot of things, okay? Like, what are you talking about? The Chinese government is watching these and falling for it? Yeah, they're changing. Yeah, they're writing about the Professor Jiang lectures on what's that website where they write stuff for the party? Like New Notes. He's going to be mentioned in the annual Xi Jinping's annual statement, like his nation address. The Quishi, right? Yeah.
Letting an entire city be wiped out so one group can consolidate their power is ridiculous. But that was only before I considered that they could just ask China to rebuild a city in 5 years. I'm sure it's just that easy. Jiang cares less about evidence or mathematical models in the world, but...
They're putting this in the CPC Central Committee bi-monthly. Professor Jiang has a brilliant new thesis that we will be discussing. Maybe they see the benefit of him rotting American brains and they let him cook. Search his name? No, I'm not going to search Professor Jiang. It's going to be another Professor Jiang that comes up.
Instead, he uses intuition.
I know it's game theory. I know you're supposed to use math, but I'll be constrained by math, okay? So I use a lot of intuition. I use a lot of doubt.
He teaches in Canada, not China? Wait, no. I'm pretty sure he teaches... Wait. No. He teaches in Beijing. No, he lives in China. And these are lectures that he's giving to real students. I'm pretty sure civilization isn't a race between education and catastrophe. Moonshot Academy is committed to building global learning community as grounded in competency-based liberal arts education and characterized by real-world projects that embrace cutting-edge technology. Our mission is to cultivate fulfilled individuals and active, compassionate citizens to support the continuation of prosperity in human civilization. Looking for 15 learners passionate about tech entrepreneurship, offering up to full scholarships of 4 years. A hackathon exclusively for middle school learners, the ISM project, discipline, subject, visual arts, family memoirs, startup game studio experience. The president of the school doesn't live in China. Why does the Chinese government allow this to happen? That's what I don't understand. Yeah, see, it's in Beijing. Wait, he's popping on fucking Bilibili too? Isn't this one of the international schools? Oh my God.
And you're not a professor. I know it's your YouTube moniker, but you're a high school teacher.
They China-fied this, by the way. That's so funny. Are you being controlled by Dongda University? Oh, God, this is a little bit of Chinese anti-Indian racism there. I saw this guy live in the UK. He has that inexplicable Indian self-confidence. That's fucked up. Okay.
I use a lot of debate.
His class, according to him, is meant to spark creativity and encourage his students to use their own intuition. The biggest problem I see with this is that his students never actually get to do any of that in this class, at least not in the lectures he's uploaded. Students should have the opportunity to create their own theories or ideas, or maybe experiment with frameworks that let them challenge themselves. This class is more about challenging Jiang to see if he can keep all the balls he's juggling in the air, deflecting the challenges he gets from his students. There's also the additional danger of his students and audience ignoring the game of creating hypotheticals while taking his statements about the real world and its history at face value. If Jiang wants to demonstrate the intersection between game theory and politics, he could simply use a fictional place like Westeros from Game of Thrones. So there's no danger of anyone taking what he says about the real world seriously. But by grounding his speculation in the real world and mixing it in with his own misunderstandings, it could only serve to confuse the audience. Something that becomes apparent when you look away from the lecture videos and the comment sections underneath them, filled with people who seem to think they're learning about the world. Jiang does himself no favors when he steps out of his...
For sure. I thought this was a college lecture. Can't believe this is high school. Can't believe I'm learning this stuff for free. Yeah, now I too believe the Holocaust, that there is no concrete evidence for it. And also, women are are constantly trying to fuck the hottest guys, and we should deny them. We should deny them the free, the capacity to make choices so we don't fall like the Roman Empire. This is incredible.
Classroom and starts presenting the ridiculous fantasies he's cooked up to a wider audience. Something he's doing more of as he started making the rounds in the podcast circuit. In a previous video of mine about Minnesota and the lies spread about that state by Nick Shirley, I paid special attention to the podcast environment that let such a clueless kid like him seem far more credible, treating his nonsense as something to be taken seriously. Jiang has had a similar experience as his public profile has risen, often brought on to discuss his theories about the world.
Professor Jiang does have much better skills in narration. He is I mean, it's not really saying much, but like a third grader probably can speak better and more confidently than Nick Shirley, but still, we know he's literate. We know he went to college. He's capable of complex thoughts, maybe perhaps too complex at times. Nick Shirley is not capable of any of those things.
As an absent-minded host nods along. Here's a quick taste of a prediction from a podcast with a guy.
If anything, I can probably safely assume Nick Shirley might have been a Professor Jiang student at Moonshot Academy. This is what happens when you get lectured by Professor Jiang.
A guy named Cyrus Jansen I've never heard of. This was recorded a few months back.
If you just look at history, if you just look at the history of humanity from a macro perspective, ice ages are a common thing. So I think that we're moving towards an ice age.
With record heat temperatures for more than 2 decades now, we're actually heading in the opposite direction, at least according to climate scientists who, I suspect, have looked into this far more than Jiang has. Here's another example of him saying something ridiculous in his interview with Tucker Carlson.
You'd be called a racist, and that's the worst thing to be called, right? You're better off being called a pedophile, right? Yes. Pedophiles have more rights now than racists.
I have no idea.
Tucker Carlson's like, he's holding it so hard. He's like, what are you saying, man?
Idea.
Right? Yes. Pedophiles have more rights now than racists.
I have no idea.
Yo, dude, Professor Jiang, man, what a fucking legend, dude. He's crazy. I feel like things just come into his mind. He's not lying when he says like the scientific method is bullshit. Obviously, everyone just, invents their own reality and then says whatever comes to their mind immediately. Yeah, it's true for Professor Jiang, okay? He doesn't hold anything back. He just says whatever comes up. No filter. Oh, that's awesome.
What he's trying to say here, aside from playing along with Tucker Carlson to pretend like being called a racist is the worst thing that can happen to you, when people like Tucker Carlson have made a pretty good living by being a professional racist. During this interview, Jiang also said,
but how much more money could he make if he was a professional pedophile? Got you there, Jose. No way, Jose. Yeah, bet he'd make even more money. Disproving your point immediately. Case in point, Jeffrey Epstein. That's right. You don't think.
As things that are so clearly and obviously not true.
These elite universities, Yale, Harvard, they are the most critical of Western civilization. They don't teach Homer and Dante and Plato.
Jiang has a degree in English.
He has a degree in English from Yale. He knows they teach that. That's so stupid. You definitely know that they taught you that. Yes, they do.
Literature from Yale, where he learned about all these figures. And I did a quick check, and there are still several courses teaching Homer, Dante, and Plato at Yale. These interviews do strip bare the defense that his ideas are meant to be fun hypotheticals, not to be taken too seriously, and he's perfectly happy to repeat them on these podcasts, like the existence of secret societies.
There will be a world war, the final war, and possibly a nuclear war. But who Gog and Magog is up for debate.
Wow.
It's a bit of a wonder where he gets this stuff from, though considering his media diet, it's not surprising that watching Tucker Carlson and Jimmy Dore contributes to someone being this confused about the world.
I think you're the best news
goat talk. All my goats.
Source on TV
goat
right
talk.
Now, even though you're not actually on TV, and actually you're not a journalist. But yes,
When Jiang sits down with Jimmy Dore, things start to get really unhinged, like when he calls the mass shooting on Bondi Beach that targeted Jewish people a false flag.
There are a lot of false flags, right? So, for example, the most blatant example is...
I spoke too soon. I shouldn't have said go talk right before this. That was a joke for the record.
You will see more examples of false flags against Jews in order to scare the Jewish diaspora to return to Jerusalem.
This interview also reveals how he got turned on to some of the more esoteric beliefs in his theories.
I spent a lot of time watching Kurt Metzger on your show, and he mentioned the Sapien Francus. He mentioned the interdimensional lizard people, and that's what got me to research these topics. And then I was slowly able to connect the dots.
I was curious about Jiang's comment about Kurt Metzger, a comedian who serves as Jimmy Dore's co-host, who's somehow even dimmer than Dore. And I found Jiang made an appearance on Metzger's podcast as well. There was more discussion about how the Bondi Beach shooting was some kind of secret plot, though he does think that the deaths were real at least. It does get significantly weirder the deeper they get into the show.
You look at World War II, okay? How much of World War II that we've been taught in school do you think actually happened during World War II? Like our understanding of World War II, do you think that's actually what happened? I don't know.
This certainly makes me think his earlier comment about the Holocaust wasn't Jiang misspeaking, but he doesn't expand on things in this interview either. It's yet another part of his pattern of believing history that's not just comically wrong, but also conspiratorial in a way that reflects some really ugly beliefs. It was genuinely a surprise to me to find out that Jiang is not a new addition to the YouTube space from an ideological perspective, but rather he's a product of the sewage system of reactionary political commentary channels. What seemed like Jiang's original bullshit is just recycled crap from someone else's rear end. The interview Jiang is probably most famous for is the one he had on Breaking Points, which has racked up 9 million views. This interview is particularly harmful because it's over 10 minutes of Jiang seeming almost respectable when he drops this at the very end.
Yeah, I had a conversation with them. They were like shocked by this, okay? They literally were like, the interview was like actually pretty insightful up until the very last moment where it just turned into something utterly insane.
He starts with an answer about the Epstein files revealing elites operating in secret, but then he makes a huge jump to assume that it's not just sex crimes they're doing.
And the Illuminati are composed of 3 major groups, okay? You have the Jesuits, who control the Vatican. You have the Sapien Francus, which control the modern state of Israel today. And you have the Freemasons, which control the national security apparatus of the United States. And they believe that Israel, this war in the Middle East, is key to the end times.
While the Epstein files obviously revealed lots of criminal activity, it was a conspiracy to commit sex crimes, not a conspiracy to bring about the end times. This is where the interview should have started, or at the very least, they should have taken some time to ask what the hell he was talking about. Platforming is a complicated subject, and if he was a smaller creator, I think providing people like him a platform does more harm than good because he's likely to reach an audience regardless of how he's presented. However, the popularity Jiang already has puts him in a category where the benefit of this appearance isn't so one-sided. But if someone like this is going to be on your show, they need to be more aggressively questioned. Mehdi Hasan did a better job confronting Jiang on some of his more outlandish claims, even if he didn't go as far as I might have liked.
I've blown up all across the internet, and I don't think this is organic. But so I wonder if there are some governments or some entities that believe that my message should be amplified.
This was so funny. I love this because he literally is just like, I don't know, maybe he's literally just like, I don't know. Yeah, maybe some governments are amplifying my message. Who knows? I make stuff up all the time. Like it's so funny because he's like so sincere about being a charlatan, at which point you're like, well, where can we go in this conversation if you're just revealing that you don't know what you're talking about and you make stuff up all the time and you even admit that you might be a psyop for a government? And like I said, the way he carries himself the way he conducts himself in this interview is so fascinating because he has this weird, like, naive confidence where he's just like, I don't know what I'm talking about. It's awesome. People love it. People love it. Maybe I'm a plant. Who knows? Think about that a lot.
It is possible I'm a useful idiot.
I've never heard this man's cadence change except when he was talking about interracial relationships. Yes, that's also true. He got unbelievably bent out of shape when he was talking about, Asian women fucking white boys. He did not like that at all.
Strange thing to say. Even though I'm critical of him, I don't doubt the ability of the algorithm to push nonsense without being manipulated by a nation state. I would like to see if he has some kind of evidence for his suspicion that he's being artificially boosted, but he's not really a man of facts and doesn't provide any.
I think that
Yeah, this is the other side of the story, which is this is the other side of the story where you can't really take him seriously, but everyone does. But he doesn't take himself seriously, so it's like you can't really conduct a thorough debate with a guy who just says, I make stuff up. Like, how are you supposed to have a conversation with a guy who literally goes, yeah, I make stuff up. It's awesome, actually. I don't know why people take me seriously. Yeah, I think it's good to make stuff up. You should do it too. It's just, what are you, okay, I guess that's it. End the debate at that point. What are we supposed to fucking debate?
education is that it focuses too much on facts, too much on rigor, and not enough on imagination.
Too much on facts. Do you hear yourself?
The last interview I want to briefly mention is...
Yeah, he literally does stand 10 toes down on that, where he's like, yeah, I make stuff up. I think people should stop relying on facts as much.
When Jiang went on Patrick Bet-David's podcast, where he had a few wacky takes, like that COVID-19 was an American bioweapon.
So I believe that this was an American bioweapon funded by Tony Fauci.
PBD, following the pattern of most of these hosts, doesn't seriously challenge him on any of these ridiculous claims.
Okay, well, what's Canadian, the expectation? You think PBD is going to do that? He's like, I'm a numbers guy. Professor Jiang, you're a very smart guy. We're going to grok it. We're going to grok it. We're going to ChatGPT it.
Oh, I do need to push back on a comment Jiang made about his former home.
If I said certain things that I said in Canada, then it's possible that I get visited by the police.
Don't worry, Jiang. They don't arrest people for having a shitty YouTube channel. And he isn't the only one living off his channel. There's currently a big gold rush right now with channels posting clips of all his lectures, some of them getting tons of views. In one case, there's a creepy AI version of Jiang that talks to the audience. I've not spoken much about AI on this channel.
Bro, this literally looks like the hotel I stayed at in fucking Doha. That's crazy. That looks insane.
But if anyone is curious, I am not a fan. And I think AI videos like these are some of the worst garbage on this website. I'll give Jiang some credit here, because at least he's spreading his own talking points. Anyone using AI to spread messages built on the backs of the labor of others are parasites on this website, and I have nothing but contempt for them. In the comments section under Jiang's videos, it was nice to see so many comments from people anxious to learn. I think that kind of enthusiasm is genuinely a good thing, and it often serves people quite well in life. But Jiang is not offering a real education. Anyone who wants to learn about history, philosophy, or game theory would be better served by, and I hate to break this to you, enrolling in a school and learning from an actual professor. I know not everyone has the means to do this, and there are some decent substitutes, such as reading books or watching lectures from people with real credentials who have been adequately trained to speak on these subjects. I'm not saying you should only listen to someone on a subject if they have a doctorate in it. I am saying that when someone is offering commentary that completely upends decades of scholarship and fields of study that have tens of thousands of people working in research, consider that these new ideas might not be completely invalidating entire fields of study if they're coming from a high school teacher with an active imagination. I'm not saying it's impossible for that to happen, just that it would require a lot of work, and that level of work simply isn't being seen in Jiang's videos. Another common type of comment I saw were people comparing the lectures to watching something on Netflix, and while I strongly disagree with that, since the new season of One Piece was far more entertaining than listening to a man ramble about the Freemasons for 50 minutes, I understand the categorical difference here. A YouTube video is a great choice if all you're looking for is entertainment. I would still argue that there are far better sources for that on YouTube than Jiang, but it's not quite as disastrous as thinking he's actually teaching you anything. I can't help but see this eerie similarity between Jiang and Jordan Peterson, where the aesthetic of academia ramps up into a caricature of education, where people are not getting the tools they need to thrive in the world, but instead a perpetual daddy figure who will spoon-feed them gibberish under the guise of bettering them intellectually. Jordan Peterson has parlayed his public persona into creating a ridiculous fake university that has all the aesthetics of education without any of the actual substance or value. My good friend Zoe B has a whole video about that institution and how it uses the aesthetics of learning to siphon money from Peterson's faithful audience. She was the one who found that anecdote about Dr. Fox I used in my intro, so give full credits to Zoe for that. After a decade of watching Peterson continuously bilk his audience for enough money to make him a millionaire, I hope we don't have to see a repeat with that with Jiang Shuiqin. Although he did say he's working on a book, so I guess we'll be seeing how much money he makes off of that.
Oh, I can't
idea for this
fucking
video
wait for
kinda
that.
came-
I can't wait for that, bro. I'm going to read the fuck out of that. That's the real theory. That's like Das Kapital. Throw that shit in the dustbin of history, dude. Professor Jiang. I'm a Jiangist. Jiangian psychology. Jiangian predictive history. Oh my God. Fucking amazing.